The silence of the Brooklyn alley is a physical weight, pressing down just before the sun bleeds gray into the night sky. You can taste the cold on your tongue, a metallic chill that carries the scent of damp trash and the deep, profound loneliness of a city that hasn't yet woken. It's a place of forgotten things, where shadows cling to brick walls like old secrets. Then, a sound so small it almost gets lost in the stillness slices through the air. It's a whimper, muffled and weak, a fragile question mark in the oppressive quiet. Your eyes scan the gloom, past the overflowing dumpsters and the discarded remnants of other people's lives, until they land on a dark, worn-out suitcase. It sits there, a tomb of secrets, and from within its fabric walls, the cry comes again, a desperate pulse of life in a place defined by decay. That sound seems to hook into you, pulling you closer against your better judgment. The suitcase is old, its corners scuffed and its handle cracked, a silent testament to journeys long since ended. Now, it serves as a prison. The whimper that escapes is almost imperceptible, a thread of sound so delicate that a gust of wind could carry it away forever. You imagine the suffocating darkness inside, the confusion, the terror. This isn't just a noise. It's the sound of a heart beating against impossible odds, a plea for help from a creature that doesn't even have the words to ask for it. The cold of the morning seems to emanate from the object itself, a chilling aura of abandonment that makes the air around it feel 10 degrees colder. What kind of story ends like this? Suddenly, the whimpering stops. The silence that rushes back in is heavier than before, amplified by the absence of that tiny, desperate sound. You hold your breath, your ears straining against the quiet, listening for something, anything. Did you imagine it? Was it just the wind whistling through a crack in a nearby window, or the city playing tricks on a tired mind? The alley seems to watch you, its shadowed corners filled with a new, more sinister stillness. The world has frozen in this one terrible moment of uncertainty. For an instant, the possibility that you are too late, that the small life has been extinguished, feels like a physical blow. The hope that had flickered to life just a moment ago is now perilously close to being snuffed out by the indifferent dawn. Then, it returns, but it's changed. The sound is no longer just a whimper. It's a frantic, muffled scratching, the sound of tiny claws scraping desperately against the inside of the fabric. It is the undeniable, visceral sound of a life fighting back. This is no ghost, no trick of the wind. This is a struggle, a miniature war being waged against darkness and suffocation. The desperation in the sound is a raw, unfiltered broadcast of terror and an unbreakable will to survive. It paints a vivid picture in your mind, a small body trembling, not just from the cold, but from a frantic energy, a primal need to break free. The sound transforms the suitcase from a piece of trash into a vessel of life, making the silence that preceded it feel all the more horrifying. You can almost feel the world from inside that fabric prison. Imagine the absolute blackness, a void where the only sensations are the rough texture of the lining and the suffocating smell of stale air and your own fear. The world outside is a collection of monstrous, distorted sounds, the distant rumble of a truck, the echoing drip of water from a rusty pipe, each one a potential threat in the terrifying darkness. There is no up or down, no day or night, only the constant, pressing confinement. The memory of warmth, of a mother's touch, is a faint, dreamlike echo that only makes the current reality more brutal. This tiny creature, whose life has barely begun, knows nothing but this cold, lonely terror, a world reduced to the four walls of its unyielding cage. Just as you take a step forward, compelled to act, another sound cuts through the morning air. Footsteps. They are steady and purposeful, echoing crisply between the brick buildings, growing closer with each passing moment. They are not your footsteps. From inside the suitcase, the frantic scratching ceases instantly, replaced by a dead, terrified silence. A long shadow stretches across the alley floor, falling directly over the worn leather case. The footsteps halt. A figure now stands over the suitcase, a dark silhouette against the growing light of the dawn. A hand reaches down, slow and deliberate, its fingers extending towards the zipper. Is this the return of a monster, or the arrival of a miracle? Inside that prison of fabric and zippers, you find the heart of this story. Imagine a German shepherd puppy, so young his paws are still clumsy and soft, his ears too big for his head. He doesn't have a name. He only has a feeling, a cold, suffocating terror that has become his entire world. The warmth of his mother, the familiar scent of his siblings, the gentle rhythm of a life just beginning, all of it was stolen and replaced with this absolute darkness. You can almost feel his confusion, a desperate question with no answer. Why was the soft comfort of a den swapped for the rough, scratchy lining of this tomb? His vulnerability is a physical presence in the stale air, a small, trembling body fighting against a cold that seeps not just into his bones, but into his very soul. What he has lost is more than just his family. He has lost the entire concept of safety. In his brief memory, the world was a place of warmth and gentle nudges, of milk and sleep. Now, that world feels like a distant, impossible dream. The stakes are terrifyingly simple. His life hangs by a thread, fraying with every shivering breath he takes. But there is something deeper at play, something even more precious than his next heartbeat. It is his ability to ever trust again. This profound betrayal, this act of being discarded like trash, is poisoning the very wellspring of his spirit. If this is his first lesson from humanity, what will he become? His desire is the most primal of all, to escape the crushing loneliness and feel the warmth of another living being once more. Yet, even in this abyss of fear, something else exists. It's a tiny, stubborn flicker of defiance. You can see it in the way his small muscles tense, a refusal to simply surrender to the encroaching cold. This is his inherent virtue, a core of resilience that was born with him. It is the raw, untamed instinct to survive that pushed him to whimper, to scratch, to make his presence known in a world that had tried to erase him. This isn't just a passive creature waiting for its fate, it's a warrior in a miniature, desperate battle. That spark is a testament to the unbreakable nature of life, a quiet insistence that even in the most profound darkness, a single flame can refuse to be extinguished. His spirit, though terrified, is not yet broken. From his perspective, the world outside is a symphony of monsters. The distant rumble of a garbage truck becomes a growl from some colossal beast, shaking the very foundations of his flimsy prison. The sharp, metallic clang of a dumpster lid slamming shut is a sound of violence, a threat that makes his heart hammer against his ribs. The air itself carries the scent of decay and damp concrete, a smell that offers no comfort, only the promise of more cold and desolation. You can imagine him pressing his wet nose against the fabric, trying to catch a scent of something familiar, something safe, and finding only the alien, hostile smells of the city. He is completely untethered, floating in a sensory void where every external stimulus is a new source of terror. Every second that ticks by is forging invisible chains around his heart. The trauma of this confinement is not a temporary state, it is actively shaping his future. You can feel the weight of what's truly at stake. His perception of the world is being permanently scarred. If he survives this, will he ever see an outstretched hand as anything other than a threat? Will he ever feel safe in an enclosed space? This suitcase is more than a physical prison. It is a crucible, and the fear is the fire, hardening his spirit into something brittle and fearful. The true tragedy would be to save his body, only to find that his soul has been left behind, forever trapped in the memory of this suffocating darkness, and the profound loneliness of being utterly abandoned. And now, as the footsteps of that unknown figure come to a halt, his world shrinks to a single terrifying point of focus. The shadow that falls over the suitcase is like the final closing of a curtain, a definitive end. Inside, the puppy freezes, his body rigid, every muscle screaming. The frantic energy that fueled his scratching is gone, replaced by the stillness of prey that knows the predator is near. You can feel his silent plea, a desperate, wordless prayer sent into the void. This is the moment where his fragile spark of resilience will either be snuffed out forever or fanned into a flame of hope. The sound of the zipper beginning to move is the sound of his fate being unsealed. This is where you enter the story. A young woman named Maya, walking toward the warm, yeasty promise of your early shift at the bakery. The cold is a familiar companion on these pre-dawn walks, a sharp intake of air that smells of asphalt and distant exhaust. But today, that sound slices through your routine. A whimper. It's so faint you almost dismiss it as the wind, but it has a texture, a fragile pulse of life, that snags on your conscience. You stop, your own breath misting in the air, caught between the warmth you're walking toward and the cold mystery hidden in the shadows. Every instinct for self-preservation screams at you to keep walking, to ignore the city's endless chorus of sorrows. Yet, your feet remain planted on the cracked pavement, tethered by a single, desperate sound. Compassion is a stronger force than fear. You turn away from the path to the bakery, your heart thumping a nervous rhythm against your ribs, and step into the alley's gaping mouth. The darkness seems to thicken around you as you approach the worn-out suitcase, the source of that heartbreaking plea. It looks like a relic from another time, its leather scarred with the ghosts of 100 journeys. Now, it holds one final, terrible secret. You kneel, the damp concrete seeping cold through the fabric of your jeans. Your hand trembles as you reach for the zipper, its metal teeth cold and unyielding against your fingertips. This feels like a violation, like opening a tomb that was meant to remain sealed forever. But the silence from within is now more terrifying than the whimpering had been. With a deep breath, you pull. The sound of the zipper is unnervingly loud in the quiet alley, a metallic rip tearing open the fabric of the morning. The lid falls open, and the sight that greets you steals the air from your lungs. Huddled in the corner is a tiny German shepherd puppy, his body a tight knot of trembling fur. He looks up, and his eyes are not just eyes. They are two dark pools of pure, undiluted panic and confusion. The stale, suffocating air from his prison washes over you, a scent of fear and despair. As the first touch of fresh, cold morning air hits his nose, he flinches, a creature who has forgotten what it feels like to be part of the world. He is so small, so utterly broken. He doesn't bark, he doesn't growl or try to run. He simply stares, his entire being frozen, in a state of shock, so profound, it seems to radiate a physical cold. You see the rapid, shallow beat of his heart fluttering beneath his ribs, the only part of him that seems to be moving. It is a moment suspended in time, and silent conversation passing between two worlds. Your world of warmth, of purpose, of a life about to begin its day, and his world, a universe that had shrunk to 4 fabric walls of absolute terror. You can feel the question hanging in his gaze, a desperate, silent inquiry that asks not for food or water, but for an explanation for a cruelty his mind cannot possibly comprehend. Then, he does something that shatters the stillness, something so unexpected it feels like a dream. He doesn't move toward you, nor does he recoil. Instead, with a slow, deliberate effort that seems to cost him every last ounce of his strength, he lays his head down on his paws. He closes his eyes and lets out a single, soft sigh. It is not a sound of relief, nor a whimper of fear. It is a sound of complete and utter surrender, the sound of a spirit giving up its final fight, accepting that this moment, this cold air, is the end. That single quiet exhalation is more devastating than any cry, a confession of hopelessness that echoes in the silent alley and breaks your heart into a million pieces. That sound is a catalyst. It flips a switch inside you, extinguishing all hesitation and flooding you with a fierce, protective urgency. This is no longer about just helping. This is about fighting back against the darkness that created this moment. You gently scoop his small, fragile body out of the suitcase, his fur cold and damp beneath your fingers. He is lighter than air, a small collection of bones and a faintly beating heart. As you wrap him in your scarf, a fragile shield against the world, you feel the first true warmth he has likely known in a long time. In that instant, you understand that the real enemy isn't the person who left him here to die. The real enemy is the clock, and its cruel, silent ticking has already begun. The first enemy you face is not a person, but the relentless, uncaring passage of time. Every second feels like a grain of sand slipping through your fingers, another piece of his fragile life lost forever. You clutch his small, cold body against your chest, the wool of your scarf, the only barrier between his fading warmth and the world's indifference. The city, once a familiar landscape, transforms into a hostile obstacle course. Each red light is a personal insult, each traffic jam a deliberate act of cruelty holding you back. You can feel the faint, thready beat of his heart against your palm, a desperate Morse code tapping out a message of fading hope. His breathing is so shallow it's almost imperceptible, a tiny, stuttering puff of air against your skin. The warmth you're providing feels like a losing battle against a cold that seems to emanate from his very bones, a deep, internal winter that threatens to extinguish his tiny flame for good. You burst through the glass doors of the nearest veterinary clinic, a place you assumed would be a sanctuary, a haven of immediate help. Instead, you collide with a wall of calm, sterile procedure. The air smells sharply of disinfectant and anxiety, a clean scent that does nothing to mask the underlying current of quiet panic. A receptionist looks up from a computer screen, their expression a carefully constructed mask of professional neutrality. Before you can even finish your frantic explanation, the questions begin, each one a small, cold stone dropped into the well of your hope. Do you have an appointment? Is he your dog? Are you prepared to cover the costs? The hum of the fluorescent lights above feels like a relentless buzz, amplifying the coldness of the tiled floor and the impersonal nature of the forms being pushed toward you. This isn't a rescue. It's a transaction, and you feel the hope that propelled you here begin to rapidly cool. Your voice cracks as you plead, trying to convey the urgency, the story of the suitcase, the sheer miracle of his survival. You hold him out, a tiny, trembling offering, hoping the sight of him will break through the bureaucratic fortress. But, to the tired veterinarian who finally emerges, he is just one more tragedy in a city that produces them by the thousands. The words they offer are not cruel, but they are devastatingly practical. The clinic is at capacity. The costs for emergency care, for an animal with no owner, will be astronomical. Your best option, they advise with a sigh, is to take him to a city shelter. It's a logical suggestion delivered with an air of finality, but it feels like a death sentence. You can feel the warmth of your righteous anger turning into the icy chill of despair as the system, designed to help, becomes the very thing standing in your way. Just as you turn to leave, your shoulders slumped in defeat, a flicker of movement catches your eye. A young veterinary technician who had been silently watching from a doorway gives you a subtle, almost imperceptible nod. It's a small gesture, a silent conspiracy against the rules, but it feels like a lighthouse beam in a storm. They guide you to a small, quiet examination room in the back, away from the administrative chill of the front desk. In that moment, this stranger becomes an ally, a co-conspirator in the fight for this one small life. With swift, practiced hands, they check the puppy's vitals, their touch gentle but efficient. They administer a subcutaneous injection of fluids, a tiny victory against the dehydration that was pulling him under. It is not a cure, but it is a chance, a precious gift of time bought by a single, compassionate act of defiance. The immediate physical crisis has been momentarily averted, but a new, more insidious battle begins. The technician has given you a soft blanket and a shallow bowl of water, leaving you in the quiet of the room to wait. You gently place the puppy on the fleece, but he remains a perfect, unmoving statue of terror. His body has been freed from the suitcase, but his mind is still locked inside its dark, suffocating walls. He makes no move toward the water, his nose not even twitching at the life-giving liquid just inches away. You reach out a hand, your fingers moving slowly, wanting only to offer a gentle stroke of reassurance. The moment your skin makes contact with his fur, he flinches violently, a tremor of pure fear racking his tiny body. The invisible chains forged in that dark alley are stronger than any zipper, holding his spirit captive in a prison of trauma. The silence in the room is deafening, broken only by the faint, rhythmic beep of a machine somewhere down the hall. You look at this tiny creature, whose life you fought so hard to save, and realize the true fight has just begun. Saving his body from the cold was a simple, physical act. But how do you rescue a soul from the memory of such profound betrayal? His refusal to drink, to move, to accept any form of comfort, is a silent, heartbreaking testament to the lesson he has learned. That the world is a source of pain, and that trust is a fool's game. You feel a new wave of helplessness wash over you, more powerful than what you felt in the alley. The true tragedy is no longer about whether he will live or die, but whether he can ever learn to live without fear. You sit on the cold, sterile floor, the linoleum a stark contrast to the emotional chaos raging inside you. Defeat is a bitter, metallic taste in your mouth, a feeling far colder than the alley's dawn. You have failed him. You brought his body out of a dark prison, only to watch his spirit remain locked inside, a captive of a terror you cannot see or touch. The silence in the small room feels heavy, punctuated only by the faint, rhythmic whir of a ventilation fan somewhere above. A single hot tear escapes and traces a path down your cheek, a testament to your own helplessness. It is a tear not of self-pity, but of a profound, aching sorrow for this tiny life that has known only cruelty. You feel the weight of his invisible chains as if they were wrapped around your own heart, pulling you down into his abyss of despair. At first, your quiet sob changes nothing. The puppy remains a motionless statue of fur and fear, a perfect sculpture of abandonment on the soft fleece blanket. But then, something shifts in the suffocating stillness of the room. An ear, one of the oversized, floppy ears that should be a hallmark of playful youth, twitches almost imperceptibly. It is the first voluntary movement he has made, a tiny signal in a sea of paralysis. Your breath catches in your throat. It seems your sound, a pure expression of grief for his suffering, has somehow bypassed the walls of his trauma. It was not a command, not a threat, not a touch, but a shared note of vulnerability that resonated with his own brokenness. His small head lifts a fraction of an inch, and his dark eyes, for the first time, meet yours with an emotion that isn't just raw panic. He begins to move. It is not a sudden action, but a slow, agonizing crawl that seems to cost him every last ounce of his dwindling energy. His small legs tremble, dragging his body across the blanket with a monumental effort that makes your heart ache with every inch he gains. He completely ignores the shallow bowl of clean water you placed so hopefully beside him, its surface reflecting the cold, fluorescent light from above. He bypasses the comforting warmth of the fleece, his entire being focused on a single, unwavering destination, you. The same primal instinct that drove him to scratch at the walls of his fabric tomb is now fueling this impossible journey, a desperate pilgrimage from his island of fear to the shore of your shared sorrow. You watch, frozen, as this tiny warrior wages a new battle, not for survival, but for connection. Finally, he reaches you, his small, exhausted body collapsing against your jeans. You remain perfectly still, terrified that the slightest movement might shatter this fragile, unbelievable truce with his fear. He takes a shaky breath, then pushes himself up one last time, his movements clumsy and weak. His head lifts until his wet nose nudges against your cheek, a cold, damp point of contact in a world that had become numb. And then, the miracle happens. A small, rough tongue extends, and gently, deliberately, licks away the salty trail of a single tear. The touch is feather-light, yet it sends a shockwave of warmth through your entire being. It is an act so profound, so unexpected, it feels like it has rewritten the laws of nature. This was not a plea for comfort, it was an offering of it. In that one impossible moment, you understand everything. This is his true nature, the unshakable virtue that no amount of darkness could extinguish. In the depths of his own agony, when he had every right to be consumed by his own suffering, he saw yours and responded. It was an act of pure, selfless empathy, a language spoken from one heart to another, without the need for words. The wounded soul was comforting its rescuer. That resilient spark you had sensed was never just about the will to live. It was about the profound, unbreakable capacity to connect, to give comfort, even after being shown the very worst of the world. You realize with a sudden, breathtaking clarity that the invisible chains around his spirit are not unbreakable. This single gesture is the key, the first powerful blow against the walls of his inner prison. You are so completely absorbed in this sacred silent exchange that you don't hear the soft click of the door opening behind you. A young veterinary technician, drawn by the profound quiet that had fallen over the room, stands in the doorway, their phone held steady in their hand. They saw it. They saw the moment that defied all logic, capturing the impossible image of the broken puppy using his last reserve of strength to comfort the human who had saved him. The phone's camera, a silent witness, recorded the miracle. As the technician slowly lowers their device, their own eyes wide with a mixture of shock and wonder, you understand that this powerful, intimate moment is no longer just yours. It has been captured, and it is about to be released into a world that is completely unprepared for the storm it will unleash. The video spreads not like a ripple but like a flash flood of pure, unfiltered emotion. It is a digital wildfire, leaping from screen to screen, igniting hearts in cities you've never heard of and countries you've never seen. Your private moment of shared sorrow becomes a global testament to the power of empathy. People watch on their phones during morning commutes, the sterile light of their devices illuminating tears they didn't expect to shed. They see the tiny, trembling body, the monumental effort of his crawl, and the impossibly gentle lick that erases a single tear. The world, so often a loud and fractured place, falls silent for 60 seconds to witness a language everyone understands. You can feel the collective gasp, the shared ache, as millions of strangers are united by the story of a puppy who, in his darkest hour, chose not to take comfort, but to give it. The response is immediate and overwhelming, a tidal wave of human kindness crashing against the cold, sterile walls of the clinic. The phone begins to ring, and it does not stop. Emails flood an inbox that was once filled with billing reminders and appointment confirmations. They come from everywhere, a chorus of voices offering help, offering homes, offering love. Donations pour in, a digital torrent that washes away the bureaucratic indifference you first encountered, transforming the clinic from a place of cold procedure into a sanctuary overflowing with hope. The staff, once weary and pragmatic, now move with a renewed energy, their faces reflecting the astonishment of a world that has decided to fight back against a single act of cruelty with a million acts of compassion. The weight of that initial indifference is lifted, replaced by the profound, humbling power of a shared cause. Weeks pass, a blur of careful feeding, quiet nights, and slow, tentative progress. You name him, Scout. And now, you stand at the edge of a vast, sun-drenched park, the air thick with the sweet smell of freshly cut grass and warm earth. The sun feels like a gentle hand on your shoulders, a stark contrast to the biting cold of the alley where you found him. Scout stands beside you, his body stronger, his coat gaining a healthy sheen, but a quiet watchfulness still lingers in his dark eyes. The leash in your hand feels impossibly heavy, a physical link to the control and safety you've so carefully constructed around him. But you know this is the true test. Healing cannot happen on a leash. Freedom is a risk, a terrifying leap of faith, and your heart hammers against your ribs as you prepare to take it for him. Your fingers tremble as you unclip the leash. The metallic click echoes in the quiet air, a sound as final and definitive as a key turning in a prison lock. For a long, agonizing moment, nothing happens. Scout remains perfectly still, a small, furry statue on the endless sea of green. He looks at the open space, at the distant trees, at the vast blue sky above, and you can almost feel the conflict raging within him. The world is big, and his memory of it is filled with terror. You hold your breath, a silent plea forming on your lips. Please run. Please be free. The silence stretches, thick and heavy with the weight of his past, and for a horrifying second, you believe the invisible chains forged in that suitcase are simply too strong to break. Then it begins. A single curious twitch of his nose, sniffing the scent of freedom on the wind. A hesitant step forward, his paw sinking into the soft turf as if testing a new world. And then he explodes. He runs with a pure, unthinking joy that seems to burst directly from his soul. His legs, once weak and trembling, now pump with a power you've never seen, propelling him across the grass in a beautiful, chaotic blur. You can almost hear the phantom sound of chains shattering with every powerful stride, the ghosts of his dark prison dissolving into the bright sunlight. He leaps, he spins, he runs for the sheer ecstatic pleasure of it. Tears stream down your face, hot and fast, but these are not the tears of sorrow he once licked away. They are tears of catharsis, of a victory so profound it feels sacred. This moment of pure, unbridled freedom is not just for you. Across the park, people have stopped their conversations, lowered their books, and paused their games to watch. A collective smile spreads across the faces of strangers, their hearts momentarily lifted by the sight of this small creature celebrating his reclaimed life. And you know with absolute certainty that this feeling extends far beyond the park's borders. This run is the final, triumphant chapter for the millions who followed his story. It is their shared release, their proof that hope can win. The image of Scout, a joyful streak of black and tan against the vibrant green, becomes the indelible symbol of his journey. He is no longer the puppy in the suitcase. He is the living embodiment of resilience. But as he runs toward the horizon, you wonder what this new, untethered life will truly mean for him. Your life with Scout settled into a new kind of quiet, a gentle rhythm that replaced the frantic chaos of his rescue. You no longer saw the ghost of the terrified puppy huddled in a suitcase. Instead, you saw a confident companion whose presence filled your small apartment with a warmth that had nothing to do with the thermostat. His transformation was a daily miracle you witnessed in small moments. The trusting way he'd rest his head on your lap, the playful bark that replaced his initial terrified silence, the peaceful sighs he'd let out in his sleep. His past was not erased, but it had been reframed. It was no longer the source of his brokenness, but the foundation of his incredible strength. The suitcase, once a symbol of profound cruelty, became a strange, sacred relic in your memory, the dark vessel from which this incredible light had emerged. You soon realized that the impossible act of empathy he showed you in the clinic was not an anomaly. It was his very essence. He possessed a profound, almost human sensitivity to the emotions of others. He would seek out a crying stranger in the park, not with boisterous energy, but with a quiet, grounding presence, resting his head gently on their knee. It was then that the idea took root, a purpose so clear it felt like destiny. He wasn't just meant to be saved, he was meant to save others. The journey to becoming a certified therapy dog was long and required immense patience, teaching him to channel that raw empathy into a focused, healing force. You watched him learn, his innate virtue now polished and honed, ready to comfort those trapped in their own invisible prisons of fear and pain. Now, you watch him walk through the sterile, antiseptic-smelling hallways of a children's hospital, a place where fear is a constant, unseen resident. He moves with a calm purpose that silences the clatter of medical carts and the anxious whispers of parents. You see him approach a small girl, her body tangled in tubes and her eyes wide with a terror that feels hauntingly familiar. He doesn't jump or demand attention. He simply lies down beside her bed, his dark, soulful eyes offering a silent communion of shared vulnerability. He becomes an anchor in her storm of uncertainty. When her small, hesitant hand reaches out to stroke his soft fur, you see a flicker of light return to her gaze. He is not just a dog, he is a key, unlocking a connection that medicine alone cannot provide, a living testament to the healing power of a gentle presence. His story, however, refused to remain confined to quiet hospital rooms. The wave of public emotion that saved his life swelled into a powerful movement for change. That viral video became evidence, a heartbreaking Exhibit A, in a case against animal cruelty that the world could not ignore. Rallies were organized, petitions signed by millions, and local politicians, once indifferent, were forced to listen. What became known as Scouts' Law was passed, a landmark piece of legislation that introduced far harsher penalties for animal abandonment and increased funding for city shelters. His face, once a symbol of anonymous suffering, was now a national icon of resilience, printed on banners and shared across social media, a constant reminder that a single story, when amplified by a collective voice, has the undeniable power to rewrite the rules and protect the voiceless. The image of that worn, dark suitcase was forever seared into the public consciousness, but its meaning underwent a profound alchemy. It was no longer just a symbol of humanity's capacity for casual cruelty. Instead, it became a powerful metaphor for hidden hope, a reminder that within the darkest, most discarded places, a life worth saving might be waiting for a single act of attention. It represented the prisons we all carry, the fears that confine us, and the incredible possibility of liberation. For thousands of people inspired by your story, every abandoned box, every closed door, now held a new question. The suitcase was transformed from an emblem of despair into a catalyst for compassion, a dark canvas upon which the world had painted a masterpiece of second chances, proving that even the ugliest of beginnings can lead to the most beautiful of outcomes. Ultimately, Scout's legacy was not written in law books or measured in social media shares. It was etched onto the hearts of millions. His journey became a modern fable, a universal truth wrapped in the story of one small dog. It taught the world that resilience is not the absence of scars, but the courage to heal, and then use those scars to comfort others. You look at him now, resting peacefully at your feet, and you understand the profound ripple effect of that one cold morning. Your decision to turn into that alley did not just save him. It set in motion a chain reaction of empathy that continues to spread, a quiet but powerful force proving that no prison, whether made of fabric or fear, is truly inescapable when met with a single unwavering act of compassion. One life was set free, and with it, the hope of millions. And so, you see how a single story can ripple outward, touching shores you never knew existed. It begins in the cold, gray silence of an alley, and ends in the warmth of a million hearts, a testament to a truth we often forget. We all carry our own invisible suitcases, those dark, confined spaces where we lock away our fears, our sorrows, and our deepest vulnerabilities. We believe them to be sealed shut, their contents a secret burden only we can bear. But Scout's journey reminds you that no lock is absolute, no darkness is permanent. It shows that the key is often not found in strength, but in a moment of shared weakness, in the simple, profound act of one soul reaching out to comfort another, proving that even the most heavily chained heart can be taught to beat freely once again. This story is a powerful reminder that compassion is not a passive emotion, it is an active choice, a verb. It is the decision to turn into the alley when every instinct tells you to keep walking toward the warmth. You face these choices every single day, in moments big and small. It is the choice to listen when the world is loud, to see the person others overlook, to offer a hand when it is easier to look away. That one decision you made, as Maya, to investigate a sound that was barely a whisper, did not just save a life. It ignited a global movement of kindness, a chain reaction of empathy that proves the immense, world-altering power contained within a single, seemingly insignificant act of caring. It asks you now, what sound you might be ignoring in your own life, and what might happen if you choose to listen. Think about the impossible miracle that happened in that sterile clinic room. The true resilience was not just in Scout's survival, but in his refusal to let cruelty define him. In his moment of greatest weakness, when he had every right to be consumed by his own terror, he chose empathy. He chose to comfort rather than cower. This is the story's deepest lesson, that our scars do not have to be the end of our story. They can become the source of our greatest strength, the very thing that allows us to connect with and heal the wounds in others. We all have the capacity to perform this kind of alchemy, to transform our own pain into a bridge of understanding, proving that the most resilient spirit is not the one that never breaks, but the one that breaks and then uses its pieces to help put others back together. The firestorm of love that erupted from that one short video reveals a profound truth about us. In a world that often feels fractured and divided, we are all secretly hungry for hope. We are waiting for a reason to believe in the good of humanity. Scout's story gave millions that reason. It was a unifying cry, a reminder that beneath our differences, a shared language of compassion beats within all of us. The flood of donations and the calls for justice were more than just a reaction. They were a declaration. They were proof that an army of ordinary people, armed with nothing more than empathy, can stand up to indifference and rewrite the rules. It shows that you are part of a silent, powerful majority that is ready and willing to fight for the voiceless when given the chance. That dark, worn-out suitcase has now been opened for all to see, and it has become a powerful symbol. It is no longer just an object of abandonment, but a question posed to each of us. It asks us to look closer at the discarded and forgotten things in our own communities, to wonder what hidden life, what forgotten potential might be waiting inside. It challenges you to believe that hope can be found in the most unlikely of places, that a treasure might be hidden within what the rest of the world has labeled as trash. The suitcase is a mirror, reflecting our own capacity to either walk past the darkness or to have the courage to stop, to kneel, and to unzip a new possibility, releasing a light that we never knew was there. Ultimately, this story is not just about a puppy named Scout. It is about you. It is an invitation to recognize the power you hold to change the narrative, not on a global scale, but in the small, quiet alleys of your own life. You have the power to be the one who stops, the one who listens, the one who chooses compassion over convenience. The world is full of locked suitcases, full of unheard whimpers and hidden suffering. The question is, what will you do when you hear one? Carry this story with you, not as a memory, but as a mission. Be the reason someone, or something, gets a second chance. Because as you have seen, a single act of kindness doesn't just save a life, it has the power to restore our faith in humanity itself.